Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel for San Diego Comic-Con at Home. This will be about comics for the littlest readers. We'll be talking about comics and picture books in comic format for little guys from preschool to about second grade, kids that are either not reading yet or just starting to learn to read. And I want to introduce my amazing panel. I've been very lucky to get all these wonderful people on this panel today. We'll start with Debbie Huey. Hi, Debbie. Debbie is a community programming specialist for San Mateo County Libraries, and she is the creator of the All Ages Bumper Boy series, for which she received a Xeric grant. Debbie, what's your favorite comic?
My favorite all-time comic is actually one for kids, but I feel like it's great for adults too. It's Yotsuba. And yeah, my favorite.
Super fun and silly. Thank you, Debbie. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Jenny Holm. Jenny is a New York Times best-selling author with 3 Newbery Honor Awards for her prose work. And with her brother Matt, she is the writer and creator of the hugely popular Eisner-winning Baby Mouse series, one of which was the first graphic novel ever to be named an ALA Notable Children's Book. And since we're talking about very young readers, she is also a creator with Matt, yes?
Yep.
Of My First Comics, a series of board books. Hi, Jenny.
Hello.
What's your favorite comic?
So it's not quite for the little ones. It's Prince Valiant, an old newspaper.
Wow, look at that.
Wow.
Good
I
call.
have an art book from that comic, and it's stunning. I get it. That's a good one. Thank you. Thanks for being here, Jenny. And now we have Andy Renton. Hi, Andy.
Hi.
He is the creator of Owlie. It won a Harvey Award, 2 Ignatz Awards, and an Eisner Award, and it is now being re-released in color from Scholastic. What's your favorite comic, Andy?
Well, thank you for that wonderful intro. My favorite comic has got to be Calvin and Hobbes. That was the one for me that kind of started me on the path of really realizing that this could be something really special. And so, yeah, just always loved it. That's the one.
Oh, that's such a good one. Thank you, Andy. Thank you for being here. And Dan Santat is the #1 New York Times bestselling author and illustrator of many, many books, which include The Adventures of Beagle, The Unimaginary Friend, which was awarded the Caldecott Medal. Dun-dun. Other titles include Are We There Yet? And After the Fall, and the graphic novel series Ricky Ricotta's Mighty Robot. And for purposes of this panel, he has done with Mo Willems the early readers Harold and Hog Pretend for Real and The Cookie Fiasco. Hi, Dan.
Hi, hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Doing well.
What's your favorite comic?
I don't know if we're discussing series or just one-off, but my favorite is Gene Yang's American Born Chinese. That was a life-changing one for me.
Great choice.
Very good, very good.
Thank you. And Jeff Smith. Hey, Jeff.
Hey.
Creator of the epic Bone, which has won 11 Harvey Awards, 10 Eisner Awards, and 2 National Cartoonist Society Awards, and more. And the early reader graphic novel from Toon Books, Little Mouse Gets Ready. Jeff, this will be interesting. What's your favorite comic? I've kind of always wondered what yours is.
I'm going to have to say it was a tie. I'm going to go with Peanuts by Charles Schultz and Carl Barks, who did all the comic books of Uncle Scrooge and Donald Duck.
Old school. Good. Thank you. It's interesting to see this spread in old to new. And my name is Tracy Edmunds. I'm an educator and an author, and I specialize in helping teachers use graphic novels with students. My favorite comic is Hellboy. I've been a huge Hellboy fan all my life. So
That was my second choice. That was going to be my second choice.
Well, you've stolen it. I don't know what I would have done. So
I know, there we go.
Well, I'm going to brag for just a second and say that for CXE, which is a festival about cartoons that I run in Columbus, Ohio, I interviewed Mike Mignola and Gene Yang. And in fact, my interview with Gene Yang is for this year in October for
Nice.
Cartoon Crossroads Columbus.
And it was you, so it's like three legends at once, you know? So.
3?
Yeah, you were involved in it.
Am I 2 of them? All right.
Thank you. We'll look for that. That's it. Is the one with Mike available anywhere that we can watch it?
I don't know if it was videoed. It was done at the Wexner Center. I don't know if they did it.
I'll have to look around. Thank you very much. Okay, getting into the meat of our topic. So the panel is about comics for the youngest readers, and I think the first thing we have to establish is what are comics? What are comics? How is it different than a picture book? Parents and teachers are really used to using picture books with kids, which, you know, maybe one big picture on a page with text. What's different about comics that makes them comics? Does anybody want to?
Who wants to give their usual spiel about this? Because we all got one.
Yeah.
Well, whoever has the staple one. I mean, I personally don't think there's a difference. And I'll just start off by, you know, I mean, I think what a lot of people like to say is, you know, the medium of comics uses pictures as the visual communication like device. And I mean, you can just argue the contrary of saying like, well, picture books have wordless picture books. There's nothing different, really, quite frankly.
Yeah, I mean, comics. Oh, go on, Jeff.
Well, I agree. There's no practical difference in terms of value. I mean, there's a little bit of difference just in terms of like comic books versus a picture book that, well, they got the balloons and all that. And with a comic, you read it just like you would a prose book. You know, you start in the upper left, you read left to right, top to bottom. And even within the panel, you read upper left, go across, you know, read the balloons that's in the upper left first, and then go to the right. And the smallest unit of syntax, I guess, is what I would say, would be any two panels, because it takes two panels to move and become alive. Whatever happens in the first panel, it's changed in the second panel, whether it switches to another scene or if it's just a guy standing there and then he's fallen down in the second panel. That movement, that two panels is the thing that makes the sentence or the unit.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think what's good.
Oh, go on, Jenny. Go ahead, Jenny.
What's good about graphic novels or comics for especially young readers, which maybe some parents might not know, is in a way they're kind of a warm up to get kids reading, because they really visually, you know, they map exactly what's happening, you know, instead of kids can actually see, you know, what is being said, who is saying something. So it's like a visual cue for very young readers, showing them who is speaking. And it's almost like mapping a sentence. So.
And you can see the emotion on the face of the character. You can see who's saying it, and you can see what they're thinking.
Exactly.
Right. So if you've got like picture books and, you know, kids that love picture books and they're trying to get into prose books, that's a big leap, you know, and I think comics and graphic novels especially really help bridge that gap. But they also, because like what Jeff said, they're teaching them the language of reading, right? Because you're not just reading one page at a time, you're reading from top to bottom, left to right. And it's interesting because that's actually it's a language, you know, comics and the ability to read comics and the ability to read books. It's a important language skill, and a lot of kids are learning it that way, and it's really great that. And the other thing is that if you're a kid and you love picture books, after a while people kind of look at you funny, and you know, like, what do you do? And you're too old for those. And you know, graphic novels look like just regular books, and it's a great self-esteem booster for kids to just feel like they're growing up and feel like they're able to accomplish something because they're reading this whole book by themselves, you know.
That's an awesome point. Thank you. Yeah, you know, from an education point of view, I really like the idea of comics for little kids. And when I say comics, I was trying to make a list of all the books I could find for younger readers that were comics. There are a lot of picture books that people would never think are comics. There's a book called The Snowman, which is an old classic. Every teacher has it. It's comics. It's sequential art. It's got panels and art, and that's what it is. And there are a lot of books on the list that I put together, which we'll put in the comments for you, that you wouldn't think are comics if you didn't know what you were looking for. But I sort of went with the idea that if it had panels, word balloons, thought balloons, any combination of those. Sometimes I have some books on there that are regular sort of image with text, and some of the pages have panels, or some of the pages have word balloons, and I'm counting that as well. But like you were saying, Andy, it's really great for young kids because they're learning to track left to right. They're learning to sequence, which is a skill that's not only important in literacy, but also in math and also in other areas. They're learning to interpret symbols. They're following the sequence of events in a story, and they can practice those comprehension skills without having to decode text. So for kids who are pre-readers or early readers and early in that reading journey, this is a really great way for them to practice those other skills without having to decode the text.
Yeah, and visually, you know, they're learning it visually. They don't have to. It's a human trait, you know. They're learning how to read signs. They're learning how to read emotions, and they can see those in the comics. They can see, like you said, the sequence of how it's all playing out. It's an important thing.
I also like to say, like, oh,
go ahead. No, go ahead, please.
Sorry, I was going to say, you know, with what Andy said about, you know, when you graduate from a picture book to a, you know, graphic novel or, you know, or comic, I see that in the library as well, because, you know, we have our sections of different books. So we have our picture books here, we have our juvenile graphic novels, and we've got our young adult graphic novels. And, you know, when you see the kids graduate from level to level, it's a, like, you know, a visceral feeling of like, oh, I'm learning. So I think it is a nice progression, you know, just a feeling of, oh, I'm learning to read better, you know.
Yeah, they're stepping up in their section. It's important.
I will say what I've noticed in the last 10 years has been a gradual influence of comics into picture books. You're starting to see more comic devices instilled in picture books. So, I mean, you know, it's probably to us, we're getting a little impatient saying, come on, let's make comics a legitimate medium that wins awards.
Yeah.
But like over in the long run, you're slowly seeing the evolution of people kind of coming to terms and understanding like, oh, they're basically the same thing. Like those lines are getting blurred.
Yeah, I mean, the people that create them, we know they're the same thing. It's all stories. It's all visual ways of telling stories. It's how it gets classified. That's the
exactly.
And I think it's important that people who aren't familiar with comics realize that it's not a genre, it's a medium. It's a way to tell stories, like you said, just like film or just like a novel or just like anything else. It's a way to tell any kind of story you want to tell. So that's important too. And, you know, kind of speaking of people that are not familiar with comics and might be a little intimidated when they come across it, I know I've talked with parents and teachers that are like, well, but how do we read these with kids? I can't just read the words because there's so much going on the page. How do we read these together? Whether we're sitting in bed having a bed story at night, or I'm a teacher and I want to do a read aloud with my class. Does anybody have tips for techniques or things that you can do to read a comics format story with kids?
I think that it's just a little overwhelming for the teachers. I think that's the issue. But it's funny for me because my earliest memories of somebody reading to me are my mom reading the Sunday Funnies to me as a kid, and she would describe what was happening in each panel and say like, okay, look, Snoopy's doing this and he says this, and that's the thing. You're telling the stories. So whatever you can do, if they can see the image, that's different, you know, but if you're trying to show it all to the class, you kind of tell it as if you were telling the story. So anything that's important to the story, you say out loud, and you can do voices of the characters and everything like that. And but if you're thinking about a comic strip, that's like 4 or 5 panels, no stress, right? And I think maybe start with that, and then you realize that it's not so hard to do this. But if you're looking at an entire graphic novel, you're like, oh my God, that's a lot of pages, you know? So that's a lot of panels. So
what I do on school visits that the kids have a lot of fun with, my brother and I do, is that we just put up a slideshow of a scene from the book and have the kids act it out as a live readers theater. So
that's so
somebody
cool.
Gets to play Baby Mouse, somebody gets to play Wilson, somebody's the narrator, and then I have the audience do the sound effects. So it's a huge cacophony of noise.
That's a good one.
Yeah, so the kids who aren't on stage like have more fun than the actors who got picked, because the sound effects are the best part of a comic. So that's what we do. And like right now during this online learning, I know a lot of publishers For instance, Random House, I'm assuming graphics did too, are allowing teachers to do read alouds online with their students. So that's something that they can actually do. Imagine Zoom with kids running around.
I can't.
No.
They have to do gym on Zoom. My kids are back to school and I hear dancing upstairs. So.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I actually did an appearance with Raina Telgemeier one time at a library. And two things. First, when we got introduced and we walked out on stage, when Raina walked out, these kids went apey. I mean, it was like the Beatles walked in. But she did the exact same thing you just described, Jenny, where she said, okay, I need somebody to come up who's going to read one character from Smile, and I'll be the other character. And they did it. I'm going to tell her about having the audience do the sound effects. So that's brilliant. That's a great idea.
Yeah,
Great idea.
All of this.
Everybody write it all down so we can keep track. Okay. I think when I went to make a list of books I could find that I knew were comics, including all of yours that I already knew were out there. And there were some places I knew to go to look for things, but then I started realizing there were a lot of books out there that were comics that I didn't really know were comics. So if I was a parent or I was a teacher and I wanted to use a graphic novel or a picture book that had comic elements with little kids, little guys, we're talking kindergarten, first grade, nose pickers, the whole bit. Where would I go to find that kind of thing? And especially now for a teacher, if we're teaching virtually, you're right, we could do read alouds, we can hold up the book, but are there any, digital resources we can go? I'll go to Debbie, since she works in a library. I find this stuff.
The library. We have all your books. Yeah, don't forget about the library, everybody. Even though maybe your local library is closed, but we do have a lot of virtual options for you. We're talking about ebooks. Hopefully your local library has a great collection of graphic novels and comics in the ebook format. I know my particular library system is awesome. If you have, just look up your library system, see what they have. Hoopla in particular, if your library subscribed to that, check it out. Awesome collection of current comics for all ages. Once a comic comes out on Wednesday, it's going to be on Hoopla too. So definitely check that out. All free, instant checkout. Most libraries have used the Overdrive service of ebooks. They usually have a great collection, and if you don't see a great collection in your library system, tell your library system you want to see more comics and graphic novels, because they're definitely available. So yeah, go to your library. Woo.
I just learned about a new service called Library Pass, which I believe works with Comics Plus, which libraries can sign up for. That they have a whole lot of middle grade and younger graphic novels on there that people can check out. So that's another one to look for, looking at your local library. Thank you. I wanted to just get sort of, since I've got all these wonderful creators here, I'm curious why you chose to make these particular books we're talking about in the comics format. I know, Jenny, you have sort of an origin story for my first comics.
Yeah, so it happened because of my daughter, Millie. She is 13 now, which is shocking. But when she was a little one, when she was 4 and in preschool, the preschool director found out I was an author and asked if I would come and talk to the kids about Baby Mouse. And I get into this classroom, and usually I kind of do a PowerPoint presentation and talk about talk about how Baby Mouse was created. But they were 3 and 4-year-olds, and they were literally just like rolling back and forth the carpet. I unplugged my PowerPoint and said, "This is not going to work. We're going to draw a comic." So I got the whiteboard and I drew a picture of a cloud that looked a little bit like this. And I said, "What's this cloud's name?" And they said, "That's Grumpy." And so I just started drawing a little comic, a little wordless comic at the time, about a grumpy cloud who was sad. And he's sad, and he's just grumpy because, not for any good reason, he's just having a bad day like many, many toddlers in the world. And he has a little a little sun showed up on the whiteboard, and I said, "Who's that?" And they said, "That's Sunny." And then the rest of this part didn't happen. And then I just drew a little heart between them, and I said, "What's happening now?" And they said, "Sunny loves Grumpy." And then I drew a picture of Grumpy smiling, and they said, "Sunny, make Grumpy happy. It's a happy ending." And I saw that at a very early, they were pre-literate, so they were just learning their ABCs, but they could recognize a story and they could tell a story. And they were so proud of themselves. And that's really where this began. And we kept it very simple. So they're all like universal icons that all children anywhere could understand: a snowflake, a sun, and a cloud, and they represent emotions. So we tried to just dial down to really simple things.
And I think we can just end this talk right now. That was perfect.
That's it.
That's it, guys.
Thanks, Millie.
I'm actually gonna throw it to you next, Jeff, because I know the book that you did, Little Mouse Gets Ready, is for Toon Books, which this is what they do. This is their specialty, making early readers on books for very young kids. How did you get involved with that?
Well, Bone, which was my real bread and butter, was never intended to be for kids or even, middle-aged kids. It was always just kind of a book I wanted to read when I was a kid. So I got known for being kind of like a kid's cartoonist, even though I didn't really know how to write to kids. I just did it. But I was approached by Francois Movie, who's the art director for the New Yorker magazine. And she wanted to start up this, a line of comics for graphic novels. And of course, she's married to Art Spiegelman, and the two of them co-founded and published Raw magazine together, which was a startling revelation for us cartoonists back in the 80s. It was comics as art, and it was really amazing. So I'm very impressed by Art and Francoise. And she contacted me and said she wanted to start up this Toon Books. And it was going to be really directed at emerging readers. And she was getting all sorts of input from librarians and teachers and educators. She wondered if I would do one. And this idea for Little Mouse Gets Ready just popped into my head just like the second she said it. I don't know why. Suddenly I saw this little baby mouse, trying to put his clothes on and get dressed in the morning. Because I don't know why, but I remembered at that instant how hard it was to get the button to go through the buttonhole, like actually hurt your finger, or how tricky it was. You had to put your underwear on and the tag went in the back. You had all these little rules. And that idea just popped into my head, just like, fully formed almost completely. And I did it. And then she was a very good editor. She almost drove me crazy, but she forced me to come up with a little narrative outside of the actual buttoning. And it turned out it was very fun to do. I had a great time. I don't know, I have friends to this day who send me videos of their kids who get to the ending, which has a little joke, and the kids get down on the floor and do like a curly shuffle. Judd Winnick's kid, he sent me a video. It was wonderful.
That's adorable. Uh-oh.
I don't remember. What was your question?
There we go.
There we go.
That was fine.
That
answered my question. I have copies of everyone's book except yours, Jeff, because people keep taking it and not giving it back. So that's a good sign. I like that those two books too, they really speak directly to kids. I mean, Jeff's book in particular, it's about a mouse who could be a kid, and every little kid has to get dressed, and every little kid knows what that's like. So I think that's a really good one that hits right at the kids. Andy.
Yes. The
Owly origin story, because I know did you intend for this book to be for small children?
No, so, I was too afraid to pursue an art degree or anything like that. I ended up going into design, and that's what I was going to try to find a legitimate way to make money. And, because I didn't know any artists, I didn't know that you could really do that for a living, right? So, but when I got into design, I didn't like it. I hated it. And so I did it for a long time though. And I was really kind of at my wit's end, and I said, because at the time I was a graphic designer, and I kept having to do the same logo over and over and over, and this time make it blue, and this time whatever. And I just said, I felt like I was wasting my life, really, right? So there was a Barnes and Noble that I would pass all the time, and I would go hang out in their picture book section. And you get some weird looks when you hang out in the picture book section of Barnes and Noble, and you're a over 6 foot tall dude, and with long hair. And anyways, but the thing was, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to make some cute picture books or something like that. The thing was, I was a comic reader. That's what I loved. I loved comics. I read G.I. Joe and Transformers comics as a kid, got into the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and then X-Men, and later Hellboy. And that's the kind of stuff that I loved. And so when I went to actually draw any kind of picture book, comics is what came out, so it was just because that was the language that I loved. And with a picture book, there wasn't enough room, and I knew what I wanted. And so once I realized that that's what I was going to do, is I was actually going to try to make comics, it was kind of weird because I never considered that I could do that. I think everybody has that point when they realize that people actually make these things, right? Like, it's not just stuff that you read, but people actually make comics. And I didn't like anatomy. I didn't like drawing superheroes, but I found a way to make comics that I wanted to read. And that's what Allie is. So.
You are the world's biggest animal lover, the person I know the most. And so for you to create a comic about what you love. Basically,
yeah.
And friendship and animals.
I didn't think it would. I was like, this isn't like any other kind of comic. There's no action, there's no fight scenes, there's nothing like that. And but it was something I wanted to do, right? And I said, well, I've got to make this. And then I was surprised when people liked it and encouraged me to do more. And that was all I needed. I was like, yes, please.
And now you get to make even more.
That's right.
Looking forward to the next book. Thank you, Andy. Dan, you do both. I mean, you do a lot of things. You're very busy. What makes you turn towards comics in certain instances? Why is that? What is that for you?
I think it depends on the circumstance. So, for example, working with Mo Willems with the Elephant and Piggy Like Reading series, he did those as early readers, and they were about 64 pages. And if you were to look at an Elephant and Piggy book, basically it's a dialogue between two characters, very simple. But when Mo does it, he writes it, I think, because he comes from a television writing background. So I think he thinks of it in a form of like a Sesame Street skit, and so you just kind of take Elephant and Piggy, imagine them as two Muppets having a conversation through something. The only difference between what Mo does and what I do for the Elephant and Piggy Like Reading series is I put my dialogue in word bubbles. That's really because I think Mo was at a point where he felt like he did everything he could do with the characters, and then had a spin-off of Elephant and Piggy Like Reading. He and I had been friends a long time, and he had asked me to kick the whole thing off. And so we were talking about different ideas, and he wanted them to be like little lessons. And one of these lessons that I did was the Cookie Fiasco. And the basic premise of it is it's 4 friends that have 3 cookies, and they have to find out how to share it equally among one another. And it's 65 pages. You get a little bit more real estate than you would say normally with the 32-page picture book. And it really gives you some breathing room to let the characters form out a little bit more and have personalities and things like that. And definitely when you're in the position of being able to instill dialogue, you can put a lot of personality in that dialogue. And so, if you were to take Elephant and Piggy book, it would be Elephant says this, turn the page. Piggy says this, turn the page. It was a one-piece dialogue per spread. Whereas, I have 4 characters, they're saying multiple things. So you have to signify which character's saying what with the speech bubble. But really the only difference in that principle is the speech bubble. Now, if you were to talk about something like projects that I've worked with Min Lei, for instance, you know, there are parts like in this picture book that I just did with him called Lift. And the premise of that book is a girl finds a broken elevator button and she takes it home. And then she tapes the elevator button to her closet door. And when she presses the button, it actually transforms her closet into a magic elevator that can take her wherever she wants. Now, when I got the manuscript, there were some very loose notes where it said, okay, well, girl presses the button, door opens to a magical world. She explores for a little bit and then comes back to her room. Now that's unpacking a lot in just a little description, you know? And
that's
so,
1 page. That's 1 page, right?
Right. And so it's like, oh, how do I encompass this, you know, in a 2-page spread? And I have 32 pages, you know? And so it's a case where you know, you have to do a lot of paneling in order to explain all this out. And, you know, it's easy for him to like write the description of the scene, but it's my job to kind of map that out. The other part of the paneling that really adds to it is that, you know, the dialogue says, you know, something on the surface, but me as the illustrator, I looked at it and I could sense that there was more to the characters. And so, you know, typically, like I said, picture books are 32 pages. And I actually approached the editor saying, I feel like I need more. I need somewhere in the ballpark of 52, 54. And they said, yeah, go at it, you know, have fun. And it was these beautiful moments where I could just build up these moments of anticipation. So, you know, rather than a picture book illustration of her, I mean, if I were to communicate all this in as few spreads as possible to fill in a picture book, I think the illustration would literally be her pushing the button while the doors open and you see the world on the other side, all in one illustration. And that just felt tacky to me. So by breaking up it into panels, you have the moment where she presses the button, and then you have the moment where she's astonished because the button glows. And then you have another moment where she's shocked because she sees a glow under the door and she opens the door, and then you look in her face and she's astonished that there's this whole world behind this door that is just a normal closet. And then you build this whole scene where she actually goes into this world. Like in one of the scenes, she goes out to a jungle and she sees, you know, a tiger. And then what draws her back into the room is that she hears the doorbell ring. And so, you know, you have all these things. It adds so much more depth to just, you know, this scene that you can't capture, you know, in a little picture book. And so for me, like it easily was a matter of just adding emotion to a scene that, you know, in a manuscript, you're trying to get the point across, but it would just seem flat. It would just seem dead if it was just done in a picture book format. So
who's getting credit for writing this? Because it sure seems like you were writing.
It's so, you know, it's funny because Min and I, we do a lot of panels and interviews. And so one of our first books was called Drawn Together. And one of the lines in the manuscript, so it's about a grandfather and a grandson that share a bond. They can't speak the same language. So their communication is that they both love to draw. And so you break into this sequence where the grandfather and the grandson are drawing pictures together. And Min's line said, and we build a world that words can't even describe. And then his art note was, draw a world that words can't describe. And I was just like, what? You know, and so.
And he's like, done. Yeah, done.
So we have this beautiful.
Pay me now.
Yeah, pay me 50%.
We do have this beautiful relationship where we definitely have, you know, like he'll give me a manuscript, I'll give him some art feedback, and then he'll change his manuscript to feed, you know, my art and vice versa. So we end up going back and forth until we find a balance. And so it's been a wonderful relationship. He's one of these few writers that is very mindful about the artistic eye and how that can actually dictate the narrative. So it's fantastic. Like it's a rare case to find an author that is so open-minded and saying, well, what does the illustrator see? I want to go in that direction too. Like it's fantastic.
Yeah, collaboration is important for sure.
Absolutely.
But you know, can I say something? I mean, hearing Dan describe that that sequence, right? I mean, if you think about a little kid reading this, you know, you've got a picture book where they've kind of got to just imagine this stuff, and that's great. But then you've got this multi-panel thing with you know, rises and falls and action and all of the crazy stuff that's happening, and it's like it just comes alive to them, you know. And it's a really great way to engage, and I think that shows you the power of comics, you know. And it's a lot like a book, right? A lot can happen on one page in a book, but a picture book, it's kind of, you know, a lot can happen, but you know, it's not the same as a comic where you can really tell a complete story. And in the end, those stories are the same, but Dan, by adding all those panels, added so much more depth and life to that world, you know. And it's just
example, it's like saying, hey, what happened to the game? Oh, the Lakers won.
Yeah, right.
And then it's like, oh, what did they do? Oh, well, let me tell you, they had a shot at 30 seconds left on the clock, and then this happened and this happened. Sounds much more engaging, much more.
And the paneling and the comics makes the reader active.
Right.
The reader has to put that together, figure out what happens in between the panels, and interact with the story in a different way.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Debbie, real quick. We know that when kids read these books, if they hear you talk, any of those things, they want to make their own comics. That's always what happens. Kids, there's something about comics makes the kids want to create. Do you have resources? Do you have places you can point us for helping kids learn to make comics?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, you know, just kids just have their imaginations already, you know, they're already have so many ideas, and encouraging them to put it down on paper in the comics form is, you know, it's pretty easy. I feel like, you know, just put some paper and pen in front of them, and then you're gold. But if you need like a little bit of extra inspiration, you know, there's definitely some great online things that have come out, especially during the pandemic. You know, Jared Krasaska, did I say his name right? Yeah, like he has this great YouTube series of just, you know, elements of making comics and drawing, and he breaks things down great. And also Mo Willems, he did his art residency at the Kennedy
Center, yeah.
There you go. Yeah, Dan was on that show too. Yeah, and you know, it's a multi-episode series of just Mo talking about his process, and also just little easy activities to do, you know, especially for the littlest readers and littlest artists. So yeah, those are, you know, it's just a lot of great content that's online. They're out there for anyone to watch, and just to be inspired and create.
Thank you. We'll get some links going, and we'll get that in the comments too. So thank you very much, you guys. This has been amazing. I can't believe it's over already. Real quick, everybody gets 10 seconds if you'd like to tell us, what are you doing now? What's coming up next? We'll just sort of go around. Andy.
I'm actually working on coloring and editing the Owly books, and so I'm on book 4 right now. Book 3 will come out in April, and book 1 and 2 are out. So I'm really, it's been great, but revisiting stuff that you drew a long time ago and having to fix it and color it, it is quite a treat. I don't know if treat is the word, but it's been really neat to draw that out and introduce it to a whole new generation of readers. So
awesome. Thank you. Jenny.
I'm working on the new Sunny book. It's the 4th book in the Sunny series, and it's called Sunny Makes a Splash, and that should be out, next fall.
Awesome.
So
that's a great series.
My poor brother's drawing his hand off at the moment.
You should talk with Dan. Dan, what do you got coming up?
I am wrapping up a graphic novel with Scholastic called The Aquanaut, and it's about these 4 sea creatures that repurpose an old diving suit and turned it into a land walking device so that they can find this marine reserve to in hopes of escaping from all the dangers of the ocean.
Oh, wow.
And then I'm also working on a memoir graphic novel with First Second. And it is about when I was 13 years old and I was running crazy around Europe with like these really popular girls from junior high. And they helped me meet like the first girl I ever like fell in love with.
Aww.
Yeah. I love romance.
And I snuck into Wimbledon. I snuck into Wimbledon center court and I watched McEnroe and Edberg play in the men's semifinal for £3.
That's
Sounds like Bon Voyage Charlie Brown, but it's going to be you in there.
Right, yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. And Jeff, what do you got going on?
I had a web comic a few years ago called Tukey, and it was about like the guy who kind of discovered fire 2 million years ago. And I'm reworking that into a graphic novel, and it's about 93% finished. Next year is the 30th anniversary of Bone, and I'm working on a large archival edition that includes a lot of behind the scenes material. And last, as I mentioned earlier, I founded a cartoon festival in Columbus. It's 6th year. Andy's been there. Jenny's been there. I'm going to probably ask you, Dan, next year. And that's called Cartoon Crossroads Columbus, or CXC, which you can see at cartooncrossroadscolumbus.org if you want to check it out.
Thanks, Jeff. Great. Looking forward to that stuff. Debbie, you do a festival, don't you? I know you can't do it this year, but maybe next year. Do you want to?
We were supposed to have Andy.
I know.
Oh, no.
Andy was totally scheduled to come. Yeah, the festival that I help lead and make is called PLCAF, or Peninsula Libraries Comic Arts Fest. It's like a month-long festivities of workshops and authors, and yeah, but we had to cancel this year, which was super sad because it was in March.
It was right when everything was starting. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And but I'm also, I'm not drawing comics as much as I used to, but I am actually doing drawing videos for my library system. So my colleague and I, we try to inspire young ones to draw comics and just doodle and create their own new original characters too. So that's what I'm working on.
Thanks, Debbie. Thank you so much, everybody. This was super fun.
Thank
Hopefully,
you.
in the future, we can all go to San Diego Comic-Con and meet up in person. Until then, stay safe, stay happy. Thank you very much. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Take
Bye,
care.
everybody.
Take care.